The first time I heard the name Count Saint-Germain, it was spoken without explanation, as if I should already know it, as if the name belonged not to a man, but to a fact, a fixed point, something permanent. There was no title before it, no date after it, just the name. Calm, complete, untouched. Saint-Germain. He did not arrive, he appeared, in cities already turning to memory, in rooms already preparing to forget, in the middle of conversations no one recalled beginning. He spoke with precision, never urgency. He listened in a way that made silence feel like part of the dialogue. He gave nothing away, but you left him certain he had offered you something, and later you would search for it, realizing only much later that it had been placed in you, not in your hand. No one could place his age. No one could place his origin. His knowledge was not gathered, it was remembered. He described the architecture of Rome as one recalls a former home. He spoke of dynasties as though naming old classmates. He made the centuries feel recent, not distant, not mythic, just recent. The details were always correct, even when they were impossible. He moved through courts and salons with the calm of someone returning to familiar furniture. He knew too many languages, but spoke only when necessary. When asked how many tongues he had mastered, he replied, "All the ones I need." He did not eat. He did not tire. He wore no rings but carried stones of extraordinary clarity, uncut and unclaimed. He never mentioned wealth, but settled all debts before they could be spoken aloud. His music sounded like memory, half forgotten, half foretold. And when he played, time seemed to pause just long enough to breathe. It was not performance, it was precision, not entertainment, not seduction, just truth made sound. When he spoke of alchemy, it was without flourish. He made no promises, no spectacle. He once said that lead did not need to become gold. It only needed to remember what it already was. That was the nature of him. Not transformation, recognition. He made the impossible seem familiar, and the familiar seem unexamined. In his presence, time lost its form. It did not stretch or bend. It simply stepped aside. Count Saint-Germain. Not legend, not ghost, not prophet. Just a man you could never reach at the moment you realized you needed to. He did not exist on anyone's terms but his own. Yet somehow no one felt contradicted. He belonged to no era, no ideology, no flag, and yet was welcomed in every chamber that mattered. In Paris, he was seen beside ministers and kings. In Vienna, he whispered through salons where revolutions were beginning in secret. In London, he walked as if the streets had been measured to match his stride. In Venice, the gondoliers claimed he needed no oar to cross the canals. No one recalled his arrival. But all noticed his absence. He never stayed long. He never stayed away. Those who met him described the experience the same way. Calming, unsettling, necessary. He would sit for hours without moving, and still you would feel something shifting inside the room. A pressure, not heavy, not oppressive, but undeniable. When you spoke, he listened, not politely, not performatively. He listened as if your words were instruments in an orchestra only he could conduct. You could lie to him, but the lie would feel smaller once it left your mouth. He spoke in parables, but only when the truth would be too sharp for the listener to hold. He did not correct, he revealed. Those who mocked him did so quietly, and always after he had gone. He left behind no records of childhood, no letters from family, no document that placed him at the beginning of a life, but his handwriting appears in journals centuries apart, in languages that had not yet reached Europe, when he was first seen there. He signed nothing with certainty, but those who kept his company carried impressions that would not fade. A conversation that changed nothing, and yet changed everything. He did not argue. He waited. He did not perform miracles. He reminded you they weren't necessary. Some swore he was a Rosicrucian, a mystic, a messenger from another age. Others believed he had no origin at all, but had simply always been. He spoke of ancient cities sunken beneath oceans. He described the precise scent of cedar that filled the tombs of Alexandria. He could name the stars as they had been arranged in the sky 5,000 years ago. No hesitation, no bravado, only memory. He did not concern himself with disbelief. He expected it, welcomed it, but it never touched him. He said death was not the end, not even an end, only a point in a circle, mistaken for a corner. He said almost nothing of himself, but when he looked at you, you felt transparent, not exposed, seen. There is a story. A woman once asked him how old he truly was. He held her gaze for several seconds, then answered, "Older than the question." She never asked again. He appeared in portraits separated by centuries. The same face. No artist claimed to know him personally. But they had painted him, and when asked how, they gave only one answer. I remembered. He wrote under different names, not to deceive, but to separate knowledge from ownership. Some of his texts were burned by those who misunderstood them. Others were locked in vaults by those who understood too well. He never returned to defend a single word. He believed nothing was lost, only misplaced. He was said to have cured illnesses with a glance, predicted storms with the taste of the wind, and composed music that calmed riots before they began. But he never called these things miraculous. To him, they were merely the results of remembering what others had forgotten. In 1784, a death was recorded under his name, a quiet affair in a small northern town. A funeral was held, a grave was marked. But those who knew him, truly knew him, did not attend. They knew better. For in the decades that followed, he was seen again, and again, in Istanbul, in Morocco, in Vienna once more, though the streets had changed. In the Americas, dressed simply, but unmistakably the same. And always he walked as though returning, never discovering, never surprised. There are accounts, quiet ones, careful ones, of letters arriving decades apart in the same hand. Instructions given across generations. Predictions left in sealed envelopes, their accuracy confirmed only after the century had turned. He never claimed authorship. He never needed to. Those who searched for him directly, with intent or obsession, never found him. But those who wandered in earnest sometimes did, only for a moment, only long enough to remember that they had always known him. No one has captured him, because to capture something, it must first stand still. He does not belong to time. He passes through it the way breath passes through a room, unseen but felt. There are those who now call on his name as a symbol, a guide, even a master. They speak of ascended knowledge, of inner alchemy, of light beyond form. They say he still teaches, though his face is no longer shown. But I do not believe he disappeared. I believe he returned to a place too old to be charted, a place not far from here, a space behind the veil of perception, just wide enough for memory, just narrow enough to remain undetected. I believe he walks still, not always in body, but always nearby, perhaps not as Count Saint-Germain, perhaps not under any name, but as the presence we feel when something in us is stirred without cause, when certainty arrives without explanation. When we remember something we've never been taught, that is where he waits, not to be worshipped, not to be understood, only to be recognized.